But in fact, I was only making things worse because it had nothing to do with my business, and it had to do everything with me sticking to my word, sticking to what I know I needed to do. And guess what? Putting my marriage on the back burner, not spending time with my children, over consuming an alcohol weren't the things that were helping me to move forward. In fact, it was keeping me away from the goals and ambitions that I had for my business. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I am your host, AZ Araujo, and I want to welcome you to join me for another Mindset Mastery at a special time. And I know it's a change for a lot of you, but I'm glad you're joining me. Again, I made this change because there was a voice that spoke deeply within me that it was time to really push myself to another level, to increase, to push myself to the capacity that I know I'm made of. You know, it's funny how things work out. As I'm training for this Ironman 70.3, I've noticed myself just becoming more aware of my patterns. I've noticed myself just pushing myself to past limitations that I thought I had. And with that, I think it's really setting the foundation of what I have to do here as we're taking AZ and Associates to another level, and also with Do the Work coaching. It's really just built me up. You know, it's funny, and I have so much gratitude for the decisions that I made in order to be in this position where I'm forcing change. And with that force comes another realm of responsibility. And with that realm comes another level of possibilities, which are things that I'm doing now that I never thought were ever possible for me. And I don't know if you've been in that situation where you're just moving along so good, or maybe looking at your bank account, or sitting back and watching the dynamic between you and your spouse or your kids. And you're like, how did this get here? Right? Especially when we're conditioned to think that marriages should be a certain way, that, you know, life should be a certain way. And in order to have money in the bank, there's got to be a lot of struggle with that. And I've sat back here the last few days and just had a lot of gratitude of how things have progressed. How I'm not just taking things lightly. I want to get better in all I do. I want things to get, you know, to a point where things are just good all the time. And I think for the most part, I'm able to operate in a place where most days are great, or I have great days. I never go an entire day where things just go down the drain, you know. And I was a firm believer that, you know, I can have a bad day, but the reality is, you know, we can change those motives real quickly if we realize that it's just maybe a bad moment, not necessarily a bad day. And thinking that I had an option to have a bad day just allowed me to like sit and wallow in certain places. But as I start really progressing in life and just looking and have so much appreciation for what I've created, and this is something that I want you to think about as well. It's like, you know, I think we're all tough on ourselves when it comes to like growing a business, when it comes to wanting more. I don't think none of us will ever be satisfied. If you think about it, we came into this business because we want more, and that's okay. There's no shame in wanting more. I think there's greater shame in just being complacent. I think that's a thought process that we need to get out of our minds, that, you know, you should just be happy with what you have. No, the reality is we should always try to force change, always try to make things better, you know, become a better person, show up more powerfully as parents. And with that, you know, this perspective just changed when I became more aware. When I started aligning myself with individuals that were living life at a different level, at levels I just didn't quite understand that were possible for me. How can I be happy? How can I have money in the bank? And how can I be, you know, a person that just feels fulfilled and happy all the time? It was just one of those things where it just didn't make sense. Because in order to reach a certain level of happiness or fulfillment, I needed to struggle on a consistent basis. That's just the way I was wired. And the reason I was wired that way is because that's what I observed. I observed my parents having to go through the ups and downs of life, where things were really good and then things got really bad. And then things got really good again, and then things got really, bad. And this pattern here was something that I took on without even realizing it. This pattern, I thought was reality of life, until I started seeing others that, you know, just lived life in a fulfilled aspect all the time. And I was like, how is that even possible for me? How can I make that my own reality? And I started going back in 2012 and 2013 as the indecisions and the bad decisions I made through my life started really weighing on me, right? Where I felt like it was just hard to get out of bed, because when you do certain things, or when you fail to do certain things, it feels like you're carrying around burdens, right? It's heavy. Every step seems like just a great task to overcome. Trying to get inspired, trying to be present in your marriage, that was just too much for me. And what I realized is I left a lot on the table in everything that I did. So I was literally lugging around luggage and anchors, as I like to describe them as, anchors of indecisions. I would say I wanted one thing, but yet I would do the complete opposite. So every day it just got heavier. It got harder. It got more challenging to do the simplest things. To even be appreciative. Being appreciative was even tough, because all I can do was wallow in my own sorrows and my own pities of the things that I didn't do, and also the things that I don't have. And it was tough. And I remember just being in this place, and I was like, okay, well, I've seen my mom kind of go through this situation where, one day she'll just snap out of it. So that's just the way I operated. While I was in a slump. And I would stay there for weeks and sometimes months at a time. And then one day I would garner up enough courage to like get up and do things. But I was tired of that in between, right? I was tired of just wasting weeks and months. So I remember I bought my first book. And, before then, I just didn't read much. I just didn't. It just wasn't part of like how I operated. It just wasn't part of the things that I do. And I got a book, and I knew I wanted to learn more about myself, about motivation, about self-development. And during that time, I remember going to the library, and there just wasn't as many books out there as there is today. I mean, you could find a few books on self-development, but it just wasn't a big thing. Today, you could go into any bookstore or on Amazon. As a matter of fact, you can get a lot of the information free, audiobooks, right? Podcasts, where it comes to where it talks all about self-development and the importance of what you put into your mind, right? Of the voices that you listen to. Like, it is abundant. You go now to any Barnes & Noble and you'll see entire sections of self-development. But I remember that during that time, I just didn't see a lot. At least, maybe I was looking in the wrong places. But there just wasn't as much as there is today. And my first book was Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins. And, I can't say that book particularly made a big difference in how I started approaching life, but it opened me up to realizing that there's something more out there. There's knowledge out there that I have no idea about. There's knowledge out there that is just waiting for me to consume. But I wasn't in that place yet. So I started with that book. And it was the power of proximity, right? The people around me that had me shift and pivot from where I was at. One of those individuals invited me to a business mastery course from Tony Robbins. That was my first real seminar, like self-development seminar. And I remember just going there, and I was just like in awe, because there were so many people there wanting the same things. There were so many people there that felt lost, that felt, just burdened by life, that were looking for something greater for themselves. And I remember going in there thinking that, all my life's ills will be repaired if I just know how to run my business. And I think a lot of you, as small business owners, are thinking the same way. Once I have my business in line, then everything is going to be okay. My marriage is going to get better. I'm going to have the time to connect with my children. I'm going to have the money to go hire a personal trainer. Once I get this business going, then. That was my thought process, right? So I focused all my efforts into trying to build this business, thinking that I had the time to repair the things that I was avoiding. But in fact, I was only making things worse, because it had nothing to do with my business, and it had to do everything with me sticking to my word, sticking to what I know I needed to do. And guess what? Putting my marriage on the back burner, not spending time with my children, over-consuming an alcohol weren't the things that were helping me to move forward. In fact, it was keeping me away from the goals and ambitions that I had for my business. Because that was unfinished business that became an anchor. I'm not saying my marriage became an anchor. I'm saying how I showed up to my marriage became an anchor. So there was no way I could grow my business if I didn't pay attention to the things that would keep me fired up for the long haul. And if I didn't have the right thought processes, the right mindset, there was no chance. It would be very much the same, peaks and valleys. So if we're sitting here, we're thinking, okay, once I get my business going, I know my wife will be happier. You're looking at it all wrong. Once I get my business going, then I'll have the money to hire this trainer. You're looking at it all wrong. I'm saying you pay attention to those things first. Your business will be the byproduct of the power you'll be able to gain from that. If you have your things in order at home, I promise you, there will be a massive shift in your business. And if you feel like you're running into a wall over and over and over, it's because you're focusing on the wrong things. It doesn't matter how much you give into your business. If things are not right at home, it's never going to be right in your business. It's going to be temporary. And that's where I was at. Hoping my business would change. Hoping it would become more profitable. Yet things at home were becoming more chaotic. I had it all wrong. And I knew it deep inside. I knew it. But yet that was much harder to fix than trying to figure out how to make the next dollar. In fact, you may be thinking the same thing. It's too complicated at home. How about I just focus all my efforts on growing my business? Because in reality, yeah, it is easier. Because this game is a simple game. But when you dig yourself in a hole at home, it can become very complex. There's so many feelings, so much history, so much resentment that can brew. And it seems like Mount Everest. You'll never get to the top because things have gotten so bad. And I remember as I became more aware of my actions, more aware of where my thoughts went. And I noticed I was a very pessimistic person. Yes, yet very ambitious. But I thought everything was for the short term. I didn't think feeling good all the time was a possibility. Now I expect to feel good all the time. In fact, that's all I ever expect. Because I know if I do the right things every single day, I will always get the right results. There might be some challenges, some obstacles I have to overcome, but those are short term. They're meant for me to overcome, to find solutions. But it's this awareness that made me look within. It was the power of proximity. It was being able to take advice, being able to have conversations with people that were living it. Not just in one element of their life, but in all aspects of their life. Having it all. And with that, I started to see a new possibility for myself, but I wanted more. I was yearning for more information. And I started finding it. I started opening up more books. Learning about the things that used to hold me back. Learning about the traits that I have and I have to appreciate. About the tragic events that happened in my life. And how that just made me stronger. Really. It wasn't post-traumatic stress. It was post-traumatic growth. overcoming those obstacles reinforces the fact that I could overcome anything. And that's the way you have to look at it. And realize if the focus is just on one thing, it's all temporary. It has to be on all things. And the power of proximity allowed me to be able to take advice from individuals that were living at that level. That realized that you don't have to make things bad before you get them to get good. And I was just so grateful this morning as I'm going through the pattern of the 12-week targets, right? And part of the process with the 12-week targets is to put a purpose deposit. A purpose deposit is simply that. Listening to something that'll make you a better person. Self-development, right? A self-development deposit. And I was listening to a lecture from Jordan Peterson, right? A clinical psychologist and a professor of psychology. I mean, a clinical physiologist and a professor of psychology at a lecture. And I'm thinking to myself, how fortunate are we to be able to listen to the brightest minds, the most intellectual minds from your phone? Like, I just stepped back and I realized, I was like, I can't believe we all have this power of proximity to the greatest minds on the planet. With podcasts, audiobooks, right? With like YouTube. We can be where those we can be in places where only the select few had access. I was listening to some Harvard lectures and I'm like, I would never get that opportunity. Most of us would never get that opportunity. About the study of human behavior, about feelings and emotions, about drive and depression, anxiety and happiness. And all I'm doing is just adding all these deposits and I'm reaffirming to myself that there's something even greater for you, AZ. There's something greater for you out there. That you're breaking generational dysfunctions here by staying the course. It's when we hide, when we stop doing the right things, that we revert back to our lowest form of habit. Back to the thoughts that we've been conditioned from a young age. And I realize it's real easy for me to go back to those patterns. It's real easy for me to shut down from my family. It's real easy for me to focus on business and nothing else. So I need these confirmations. I need this constant this constant talk to my ears, right, through my headphones. These lectures, these audiobooks. Because I need to be aware of my behaviors, because I know what I'm capable of when I'm not on my game, and it's nothing that I'm proud of. So I have all these great mentors, and they have no idea that I'm a student. They have no idea how much they've changed my life, because I decided to lean in. And just because they're not within my realm doesn't mean they're not in my realm. These individuals made a huge impact in my life. Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, a book that to this day has changed the dynamic of how I approach my daughters and how I lead my daughters and coach and mentor my daughters. The Dark Side of the Light Chasers with Debbie Ford allowed me to realize that shame, when it's brought up to light, is power. It's no longer shame. All these books have allowed me to see a greater me. But I needed just their perspectives to change my own. Byron Katie, loving what is. Allowed me to process situations, ask myself the right questions. Because my initial reaction, what I learned from a young age, is if you push me, I push back, I react. So my emotions were always based on somebody else's. It was a reactive mode to somebody else's. Now I know. I take full control. You're not going to bring me down to where you're at. I'm going to bring you up to where I'm at. And there's so many great books out there, and there's so many great lectures and just, podcasts out there that I'm just consuming because I know there's more for me out there. There's people living it at a high level. And every time it seems like we take our family to the next level, I realize that there's more. So we have to approach this and take advantage of the technologies that's out there for us. Realizing that we have access to all this. We have the power of proximity. So now, how do we apply this on a daily basis? Well, the 12-week target book calls for it to be done on a daily basis. Take 20 to 30 minutes every day. Listen to multiple audiobooks, whatever inspires you, whatever has you learn why you always retract, why you fear some things, why you shut down, like learn about yourself. What is it? What is that moment? What are the trigger points that get you to that point? Why does it shut you down? How can you overcome? There is no shame on our past. If we bring it to the forefront, it's all power. So part of the process is to put in the self-development deposit. Because listen, you may be wired the way I am. I overanalyze some things. Makes me nervous, a little anxious even. So I need reasoning. And I need to be reminded of what I'm made of. You simply being on this call is a great step forward. But it's your responsibility to consume more. And when you consume it, it's to apply it. To be aware of it, to teach it, to live it. It's amazing the power of proximity will do to us. Because that's the age that we're in. So it's a personal responsibility. What can you learn today? What can you learn about yourself? Those dysfunctional habits, where does it stem from? Sir, we were riding this weekend, and we're on this isolate, like desolate road. I mean, it's just like nobody's out there. It's a neighborhood road, so we would run into cars every once in a while. But for the most part, like, the cars that do come by, they take precautions. When they see a group of riders, there's 8 of us out there. On the right before we go into the turn into one of these smaller roads, there's a car that whizzes right by us, honking. Like fast. This neighborhood, you should only drive about 35 miles an hour. This guy was flying down the road. And it's only 6 o'clock in the morning. And he's honking and he's yelling like, get out of the road. I mean, we have as much right as he does as bike riders, right? Especially in a neighborhood road like this. And he had so much anger within him. And I noticed myself, like he triggered me, and I wanted to get as angry for him, towards him. Because it was dangerous. He could have ran one of us over. He shouldn't have been driving that fast. But instead, I started empathizing with the gentleman. What's going on in his life for him to be this angry at 6 o'clock in the morning? What's happened? What generational dysfunction has he failed to correct? What are the lies he's making as truths? And I found myself having a lot of empathy for that guy. As opposed to getting angry myself and getting upset the entire time, I found myself feeling sorry for the guy. And I know it was a culmination of bad decisions he's made. I don't know what's going on. Maybe the sheer point that there was a bunch of guys exercising in the morning triggered him. Maybe there's something going on with his marriage. Maybe there's something tragic that just happened and we're the target of his frustrations. I don't know that. But what I do know is that I kept my cool. What I did notice is I empathized with him. And I even wanted something better for him. We should never get to that point when life is so good. And this is where we need to ground ourselves. This is where we need to learn about ourselves. And realize that whatever challenge you're facing, within your business at home, within yourself, your own mind, there's something you got to learn from that. And that's why you're experiencing it. But the power of proximity, we literally have it in the palm of our hands. And we need to take advantage of that. And not just oversee it, but do something with it. Every day. I was reading this book, The Happiness Hypothesis. And it's finding modern truth to the ancient wisdom. And I wanted to read something to you here really quick. And I know we're running short on time, but it talks about how, a lot of us see this post-traumatic stress, like, when something tragic happens to us, the way we seem to analyze it is like, hey, he suffers from, or she suffers from post-traumatic stress, like a negative thing. But they realize that, over the last 15 years, that researchers have gone beyond resilience and begun to focus on the benefits of severe stress. These benefits are sometimes referred to collectively as post-traumatic growth, in direct contrast to post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a whole new, there's a different element altogether. And when I think about what I've gone through personally, now I want you to think about what you've gone through in life. That should be the foundation of us realizing that we can get through anything, right? And there is a benefit to that. That we saw ourselves overcoming things that we never thought were possible. But it goes on to say that one of the most common lessons people draw from trauma is that they are much stronger than they realized. And that this new appreciation of their strength then gives them confidence to face future challenges. Gives you grit, right? You have grit. I have grit. This says, traumatic personal losses often seem to be inoculated against future stress. They recover more quickly, in part because they know they can cope. They recover more quickly because, in part, they know they can cope. I love that. And this is the way we need to approach things. But in order to cope, we need to be aware. In order to feel that strength, is we need to bring that to the forefront and take that shame into the light to realize that there's power. So guys, take advantage of this. Take advantage of the power of proximity. It is at the palm of our hands. And it is part of what makes life so good. The prime 3, power, purpose, profits. Today was all about purpose, self-development. And it's your responsibility, 15 to 20 minutes every day. If you only have 10, just take on the 10, but learn something about yourself. Learn how you can break these generational dysfunctions. Learn how to be happy all the time. But I do want to thank you because you've been on this call right here. Hopefully shifted some of your mindsets. Hopefully changed your perspective. and realize you're made of more. But I want to go ahead and go down. There's a lot that joined. Thank you for joining. I know there were some comments here. Mir, that is exactly me. I overanalyze and try to be very critical in my thinking. Sometimes I let other people's emotions control my reactions. And we all have the solution to whatever task or whatever question, whatever adversity we have within us. Don't avoid that voice. Amir, you have a voice that's screaming at you. You know exactly what to do. And until you make that decision, it's going to feel very chaotic. That is until you just say, I know exactly what to do. Caroline, I like turning it to a positive. Absolutely. Jermaine, good morning. Raquel, I love when you said our past isn't shame, but it's power when you bring it to the light. There was a book that I mentioned by Debbie Ford, and she was just so instrumental. She died about 10 years ago. But she was just so instrumental in me understanding these shames, right? Because, growing up, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't grow up in the best of neighborhoods. And there was a lot of shame in that, to a point where I would literally just try to speak a different way. I would try to dress a certain way so that people wouldn't discover me. And it seemed like things only got darker for me because I was really just posturing, smoke and mirrors, and that's tough to keep up. I would make up stories about certain things that happened in my life. Then I couldn't even keep up with those lies. And it was hard. It was very stressful. I was trying to avoid certain conversations. And reading this book, it really just brought things out to the light that, this is my X factor. Was exactly, my experiences were exactly what needed to occur in order to be the person that I was. And there was no shame in that. And I think by keeping it in the dark, it seemed like scarier if it were to come out to the light. It seemed more shameful because I didn't want to even talk about it. But once I did, it was like, there was appreciation in that journey. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Because not all of us are dealt with cards that necessarily benefit us from day one. But it doesn't mean that we have to stick to that story. And I made those changes. And I'm proud of what I've done. And I'm proud where I'm leading my family. And it was only on the back of bringing that to the light. And I think once we do, it's a powerful feeling. It's a powerful way to live. But it was Debbie Ford and the dark side of the light chasers that really got me to just own who I was. Along with another book by Byron Katie, Loving What Is, asking myself the right questions, right? So many mentors, and they had no idea. But these individuals have just changed my family, along with my coaches and the mentors that I did have in my proximity. And it's so important that we continue to put that on ourselves. We got to continue to grow. Because I will not go one more generation. I will not allow my kids, right, to try to figure out the things that I couldn't. To try to figure out the things that my parents or their grandparents couldn't. Like, they have so much more to figure out on their own. Why do they have to deal with my baggage or my parents' baggage or their parents' baggage? It was my responsibility to shift that. And it all started with my mindset first and foremost. Because to create big things, you got to make sure you're able to bring a conclusion to the things that were holding you back before. And in this case, it was generational. Audra, good morning. Needed this motivation today. Joanna, I'm glad you're here. Jeanette, thank you. Do not give yourself an option to have a bad day. I love it. Edgar, thanks for joining us. I always avoid my purpose profits because I'm afraid of something in myself. I need to focus on my purpose profits. Absolutely. These purpose deposits, man, They're just huge. But allow yourself to really bring to the forefront the things that we've been hiding. It's not as painful. It might be the first couple times. I remember having to describe certain things, and I couldn't do it without like getting real emotional. Now it's just like, this is what happened. This is where I've been. This is what occurred. With a smile on my face. Attitude is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Optimism is a choice. Kindness is a choice. Giving is a choice. Respect is a choice. Whatever choice you make makes you. Choose wisely. Absolutely. You got to repost that, man. That's powerful. Edgar, seek to associate with those whose success is established. The richest man in Babylon. Absolutely. Every great thing that needed to be said has been said. Now it's like, whose voice will you hear? Because everyone's experience is different around that specific thing that has been said. Growth never stops. Always strive to be better. Learning about you never ends. I hope this served you. But again, just waking up with so much gratitude and listening to a lecture by Jordan Peterson, and then reading this book by Jonathan Haidt, Happiness Hypothesis, and just listening to the podcast, it just made me appreciate the access to so much knowledge, and we got to take advantage of it. So much knowledge regarding our human behaviors, and that there's a way to live a life on fire. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.